Hi, friends of Turn to the Stars. I'm Andrea Klim, and I am going to do a sample reading today of Prince Harry, the Prince of, or the Duke of Sussex chart. This is what you see on his screen. On the screen is his birth chart, his soul chart. I call it the map of what his soul carried into this life. And it is based upon information, birth information that I researched. And so his birthday is September 15th, 1984 at 4:20 p.m. And that's in Paddington, England. And I'm using as his current location, Kensington Palace in London. And because there's so much talk in the news about Prince Harry, I thought I'd do a little sample reading to give you an idea of what it looks like to, if you would be interested in having a reading done that's recorded without you personally participating. So I thought I'd give you a little sample of what that looks like, and if this is something that might be of interest to you, if you're that super busy person who likes to listen to things like this while you're driving, or while you're folding your laundry, or you're washing your dishes, or you're in the shower. I thought this might be something that you might find interesting and that might be of help to you in your life in the future. And typically what I do is I do this month by month prior to each new moon, and prior to the eclipse season, because eclipses are major markers of big change coming into people's lives. So I thought this might be something that you might enjoy having the opportunity to listen to. So Prince Harry's chart, he's a Virgo. We can see the sun in Virgo right here. And he has Mercury, which is the planet of communication, in Virgo also. And he has Venus in the sign of Libra. Venus is the glue, the love that binds us together. It's where we attract to us in our life. And we also see Pluto in Scorpio. And this energy all right here in his chart is pre-conception. So his conception point is Libra, which is the ruler of the 9th house of this chart, which is, we consider that as the conception point. And so we have to look at that when studying astrology, because it is the way in which we create, because it is the way we were created through, or the energy influence we were created through. And so he did come through an energy of love and a mutual partnership or understanding that they wanted to have a baby. And we see Venus right on the conception point. And Venus in Libra is a great place for Venus to be, because Venus is the planet that rules Libra. So he did come through a portal of love and diplomatic. It was a very diplomatic, a very harmonious type of time in his parents' life. So we also do see Pluto in his 9th house of his chart, which is typically quite an indication that he was an answer to a wish for his mother. She was praying for another baby. She was in a place where this is what she believed would change her life. And then we also see Saturn in this particular part of his chart, which is typically a signature of some type of limitation in development. And we can go further. I don't want to do a full interpretation of his chart, but I do want to talk about, what's happening coming up in his life, what the eclipses are showing, and the indication that is indicated by these eclipses that just occurred December and January, the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020. So I'm just going to kind of briefly go over where everything is in his chart, and then we'll talk about the eclipses and what changes, influences are indicated by those eclipses. So we also see the south node of the moon, which is an indication of comfort, a place of comfort. And this whole area of the chart is gestation. This is where Prince Harry is developing in Princess Diana's womb. And so the belief and the theory is that everything she's experiencing, he is experiencing, and he's growing in the process of her having these experiences. So there was a lot, as you can see, all these planets right here, there was a lot going on while she was pregnant with him. And there was a lot going on, this is preconception, there was a lot going on preconception in her life. And a lot of changes, a lot of just, we could talk about this. This is a full conversation, but there were a lot of changes that she was experiencing, and mostly from people around her. And there was a lot of love, and there were some adjustments that she was making in her relationship. So let's continue to talk about this. Uranus in the sign of Sagittarius in this particular area or chart says that indicates that there were some unexpected, maybe even crazy things that were happening in the community that she was living in, and it had to do with beliefs. And we see Mars also in Sagittarius, which is a lot of activity, a lot of travel, and that there was this nice connection between her and Prince Philip. And then we also see down here, just prior to her delivering, probably in the last trimester of the pregnancy, we see Neptune, the planet of confusion, of beliefs, and we see it that it's in tough aspect to the sun. So there was something that was confusing, that was causing probably some stress in her life, and it was associated probably with Prince Harry's father. And then we also see Jupiter. Jupiter is typically a grandparent, and we see Jupiter in the sign of Capricorn. And so this year, as Jupiter is in Capricorn, is going to be a significant year for Prince Harry. Jupiter in Capricorn is also the signature of someone who is very much a business person. And he is very organized. He thinks things through when it comes to communicating with other people about their values, their sense of worth, their investments. And so, but this is pre-birth, and we can see that his birth point is Capricorn at 11 degrees. This is childhood, early childhood, and this would be some very important events occurring in his life. The moon at 21 degrees of Taurus would be an indication of his mother's you know, emotional patterns he inherited from the maternal side of the family, where the sun would be things he inherited from the paternal side of the family. And it's kind of interesting too that we see Mercury, the planet of communication that rules over communication, ideas, and Mercury is in square to Uranus. So this would be an indication that Prince Harry would be somebody that would be a bit of a rebel. He would not conform to the norm. He would think about things very differently. It would be a challenge for him to follow the status quo. And so I'm going to come back to talk about the moon at 21 degrees of Taurus. So that would be the indication of a very stable mother, a very reliable mother, a very dependable mother. And this particular area of the chart would also be an indication of family, that emotionally there was a very strong value system put into place by his mother. And it really was an asset, and it really was a gift that he inherited from her and also from his father, being a Virgo, a very earthly, practical nature, even though he is somebody who would be challenged to follow the status quo, to think the same way as his brother. Mercury is typically a sibling. He would probably not agree so much or think about things in the normal way as most people. And his life direction would be one that would be very focused on family. However, there would also be some big adjustments that he would be making in his lifetime. And there would be some conflict that would be associated with his home and with his family. He is somebody also that would have a hard time to express his heart, a hard time to, this is Chiron. Chiron is what we call the wounded healer. The key to healing is truly in self-expression, but it would be difficult for him to express his heart. It means that there's a wound here of self-expression or being recognized and noticed for his specialness, and that he, you know, we see a mutable T-square right here that's associated with Chiron and Mercury. So it wasn't easy for him to always communicate what was on his mind. So now I'm going to go ahead and add an outer ring to his birth chart, and I'm going to take it to be right at the time of the first solar eclipse that we experienced, and this would have been in Kensington Palace in the United Kingdom, December 26 at 4:12 a.m. GMT. And we see, so we have his birth chart as the middle chart here, and then I've added transiting planets, meaning how the outside world is affecting Harry, Prince Harry. And we see this eclipse, solar eclipse at 4 degrees of Capricorn, the sun and moon coming together, and we see Jupiter, we see the south node, and we see Mercury, and we see all of this on top of Jupiter in his chart. So first of all, we want to look at the placement of this eclipse, because it is a major marker of big changes that are coming into Harry's life, and where there will be a new light of direction. But for him, it would be attending to some structures or patterns that come from the past and that he has thought about in the past, and maybe even business ideas or things that he'd like to change in his life. And he is, when I see this eclipse at 4 degrees and it's trining Mercury, so it's going to be something that he is in agreement with as far as values and sense, his values with his partner, because this part of the chart would be um, his partner's money or values or other people's values, and this would be his money and his values. So there's something from the past here that's coming up that he is going to be experiencing some changes with, because it's something that he believes in. And so this is going to be something that he's talking about, thinking about, but he's probably keeping it secret, hidden, kept to himself until he's ready to really come out and reveal it completely. And I also think that it would be something that, because we see the Mercury here on top of Neptune, and Neptune in his birth chart is in square to the sun. So that tells me that this is something that probably is not going to be so easy for his father to understand, and something that he may not be completely transparent about. So this is a marker of what the next 6 months is going to bring into his life, of what is going to unfold in his life. And so it's a marker of the end of a period and the beginning of a new period. And it's interesting. So every single new moon, which is going to be around the 26th of every month until this summer, is going to bring a new theme that will build on this theme that I've just talked about. And there are some other things that are going on here also. And so, this is about decision making for him, that there's changes in his thought process, and that he's considering some things that he's thought about in the past. And there is this open door, so to speak, to bring this information forward. He has Mercury in Virgo, which is a very analytical sign. It's a signature of a very intelligent person who, in his mind, breaks things down, analyzes them, and sees where they fit. And he would make his decisions very much based upon his partner's thoughts, ideas, and he is actually, I would say, more easily influenced by his partner and their thoughts. But he is also a very practical thinker. But again, as I talked about earlier, he is also somebody who is more of a rebel when it comes to his thinking and making decisions because of the Mercury square Uranus. Uranus is the higher mind, Mercury is the lower mind. And so he is somebody who's going to think more outside of the box rather than inside the box. So the next 6 months is going to be revealing a lot about what he's thinking about and what he's thinking about as far as business, as far as investments, as far as different beliefs, other people's beliefs, and he's thinking about change. He's thinking about making some changes. And it's also very interesting because if we go forward and I would say and I'm going to just come back here for a second, if we were to go forward to the eclipses that are coming this summer, between now and then, we're going to see a slow process of transition happening with him because his beliefs are very powerful. And what he believes in is going to have a lot to do with his decision making. And if we go and we look at the lunar eclipse, which occurred on January 10th at 6:02 p.m. in the United Kingdom, we see the lunar eclipse is right here, and that is in Cancer. And this part of his chart brings to light his personal relationships, his marital relationships, his business relationships, and that emotionally there is a lot going on with family. Cancer is the signature of family, but also for him, there's a strong emotional realization about his partner, about his marriage, and that he's the north, this is what we call a north node lunar eclipse, and this occurs on a full moon. So it brings to light a full expression of emotion and feelings, and for him, a new direction due to his work and his family and security. These things are all very associated with this full moon. And we also see that this full moon, lunar eclipse, is squaring Venus. And these are cardinal signs. And what that means is that there is some type of action associated with his feelings and his emotions. But the square is an indication that there is some challenges with these changes that are happening, and it would have to do with money, inheritance, investments, relationships, and so and it would be with his family, because Venus is the ruler of this part of his chart. Venus is the ruler of Taurus, and so this is indicating that there is this challenge, or that there's going to be some obstacles associated with what this new direction and the feelings associated with his family and the relationships with his family and money, because Venus is about money, and it would be hard for him to be diplomatic. And this would also put a delay in what he wants to do moving forward and the changes that he'd like to make in his life. So this would slow everything down. It doesn't indicate that he would not be able to do what he wanted, but it would take some time, probably till around the first part of April, before we start to get some realization of what this is going to look like for him, because the full moon at that time is going to be right on top of Venus. So that is going to shed light on his new direction. The other thing that we see happening in his chart is that we see Neptune transiting his second house of his money. And Neptune is a planet of confusion, disillusionment. It can be suffering if it's in poor aspect. It can be confusion. It can be deception. And it can also bring, non-transparency around what he believes in or what he is dreaming about. And so he's not really clear, I would say, on those areas. And this is associated with his money and his sense of security. And we do see on this lunar eclipse that this is Neptune's transit is forming an inconjunct aspect of Venus in his chart. So that means that there's some conflict with his family around money, with his inheritance, with his values, and in his relationships. And so it would take adjustments all the way around to resolve this. And the other thing it's coming up, we see that also Neptune is squaring Mars in his chart. Now this has been going on for quite some time, and that means that Mars is about action, activity, and Mars is in Sagittarius, and this part of his chart is about his community, his friends, his community, his goals, and his objectives. And Mars can also be, when it's in poor aspect like this is a square, so it means it's a challenge. It's going to be a challenge for him to act on his goals, his objectives, and that he may not be supported by his community or his friends. And Mars also brings into light the third house of his chart, which is about his siblings, about his decision making, and that he might be angry and be causing some anger around him because of his dream and what he values. So this is going to be something that's going to take some time this year in order for him to get some clarity on. And I do look at timing on the retrogrades of this because Neptune is actually going to move all the way to 20 degrees in Pisces before it goes into its retrograde. And so this is just presently, so this energy is really peaking. So this has been something that he's been actively thinking about, changing his community, making some decisions. And he's been thinking about this for probably the last year at least, because Neptune transits are not short. They take quite a bit of time to unveil and to get clarity. The other thing that I see happening on this lunar eclipse is that you see the sun in his chart. The sun is the spirit. It is the signature of that person's identity, but it also refers to his father and his father's values because of where it's placed, and that he's somebody that puts a lot of energy into helping other people through times of change and to help other people to understand their values, and or even that he puts a lot of energy into areas of security and investments, and he's very analytical about that. And there is this whole cluster of energy here. Do you see Pluto, Saturn, Mercury, and the sun on this lunar eclipse at 22 degrees? So that's telling me there is this, what we would call a trine. That means that there is this open door for some type of transition for him personally, for his responsibilities, and for him wanting to do some restructuring in his life, and that he's thinking about this, and that he's putting a lot of energy into his own, probably his own business ventures, and that this is the time for him to be considering these ventures. And so this is something that for him is important, and the timing is very, very ideal for him to be moving forward on some of these areas that he is considering personally making changes with. And the other thing is that you can see that all of this is close to the same degrees as his moon, which is his feelings, his emotions, and his connection with family and communication with family. And so this again is also a trine. So whatever he's doing here is something that holds great value for him. And it does indicate that, you know, I would say that his family eventually will support him, and that they will understand and figure out the value of him making this change of his living situation. So I wanted to just share that with you. And the other thing I wanted to share was that Uranus, you know, Prince Harry's been going through some real, I would say, realizations or changes in the way he thinks and the way he communicates, and that he's thinking a lot about the value. Taurus is a money sign. It is a earth sign. It is a practical sign. It is a strong, very stable sign. But Uranus is all about surprises, unexpected decisions, and I do think that the direction that he wants to go in his life on a day-to-day basis is one that's going to be beneficial to him, but one that is going to cause great opposition and awareness to his country, and it's going to be one that brings great change into his life as far as where he's going. This has been very active since May of last year and prior to May, because Uranus would have opposed Pluto. So that tells me that there was something that would be quite surprising that he would communicate, but this is something that he needs to do because something in his mind, it's an idea that he has, and he feels it's one that's of great value. So I wanted to share this little sample of what you might expect if you would like to have a consultation that I record for you that gives you some insight month by month by month into changes happening in your life, the theme around that month, what would come to light around the time of the full moon, and all the other planetary aspects that are influencing you as a person in your life. So if this is something you think you'd be interested in, you can contact me at Andrea@TurnToTheStars, or you can go on my website, which is www.turntothestars.com, and just register there. What you will get is a interpretation month by month by month, which will be one recording at a time, if you should choose it that way. And if you have any questions, please feel free to call me at 603-490-6253. And I want to thank you for watching and all your support. And I look forward to talking to you and seeing you very soon. Thank you for joining me.